My neighbor kept hosting loud parties until 4 a.m. and told me to get earplugs if I had a problem. When I called the police, he smirked. They won't do anything, I have friends on the force. At the town hall meeting, I stood up and said, then let's talk about the noise complaint petitions signed by the entire neighborhood. I live in a quiet neighborhood near Greenville, South Carolina. It's the kind of place where folks wave from their porches, kids ride their bikes until the streetlights flicker on, and everyone knows each other's dogs by name. I've lived here 18 years. My wife and I raised our kids here. We're middle-aged, average people. We go to work, pay our taxes, mow our lawn, and don't bother anyone. Everything was normal until he moved in. The house 2 doors down from us had been vacant for a few months. Then one day, a U-Haul showed up, and out stepped Brett Delaney. That was the name on his mailbox and later on the citations. I never forgot it. He was young. Early 30s, maybe? Drove a black Range Rover with tinted windows. Always shirtless or in a tank top. Sunglasses on the back of his head, flip-flops, Bluetooth speaker in hand. The moment he moved in, it felt like someone turned the volume up on the whole block. First weekend, there was a party. Loud music, but it ended around midnight. Fine. It's summer. People celebrate. No big deal. Second weekend? Another party. Bigger this time. Music louder. Cars lined the street. People yelling. It went till almost 3 a.m. Third weekend, it didn't stop. The music started around 9 p.m. Friday and didn't end until 5 a.m. Saturday. There was a fight on the front lawn. A girl sat crying on the curb while some guy yelled into his phone. Someone knocked over my mailbox. I didn't see who. I just found it lying on the ground the next morning. That's when I walked over. It was a Sunday afternoon. I figured I'd talk to him calmly, man to man. Maybe he didn't realize how thin the walls were around here. I knocked on the door. It was open already, and I could hear EDM music playing inside. A few crushed beer cans were on the porch. Cigarette butts everywhere. Brett opened the door shirtless, still holding a beer. Me. Hey. I'm Mike. I live a couple houses down. Just wanted to ask if you could maybe keep the music down a bit at night. He looked me up and down. He didn't say anything right away. Then he smirked. Brett. You ever tried earplugs? I thought he was joking. Me. Excuse me? Brett. Dude. It's my house. I can do what I want. You don't like it? Earplugs. Problem solved. I stood there for a second, kind of stunned. Me. We've got families here. Kids. Nurses who work early. You're waking up the whole block. He laughed. Brett. Then tell them to come talk to me. I walked away. That night, the party started at 10 p.m. By 2 a.m., it was louder than ever. That was the first time I called the cops. I dialed the non-emergency line and explained what was happening. The operator said they'd send someone out. At 3 a.m., 2 patrol cars rolled in. I watched from my porch. Brett walked outside, arms open like he was greeting old friends. Hey, what's up, Kyle? Tommy! One of the officers laughed and said, You again? All right, man, just keep it down. They didn't go inside. They didn't issue a ticket. They didn't even knock on the door again. They left. Next day, I saw Brett washing his car shirtless in his driveway. He saw me and grinned. They won't do anything, he said. I've got friends on the force. The thing about living in a neighborhood for nearly 2 decades is you know people. You build trust. I started talking to the others. Mrs. Delacruz, across the street, told me she hadn't slept through the night in weeks. Terry, the retired Navy guy on the corner, said he called the cops twice too. Got the same. We'll talk to him response. Even the Wilsons, who keep to themselves and once posted a no soliciting sign just to avoid Girl Scouts, told me they were fed up. So I started documenting. I kept a log of every party. Time it started. Time it ended. How loud it was. When people were yelling. When I called the police. Then I had an idea. I bought a cheap outdoor security camera and pointed it down the street. It had a mic. It picked up sound. I set it to record every night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Then I started collecting statements. I went door to door, clipboard in hand. I didn't pressure anyone. I just asked one question. Has the noise from 1147 Pineview Drive been affecting you at night? Out of 23 houses on the block, 20 signed written complaints. 2 didn't answer their door. 1 was Brett. I compiled everything into a folder, timestamps, videos, witness statements. I even printed screenshots from Brett's public Instagram stories. One had him doing shots at 4:17 a.m. with the caption, Neighbors hate me lol. One night, the music started early. 8 p.m. I could feel the bass vibrating in my chest. At 2:15 a.m., someone leaned on their car horn for over a minute. I went outside to see what was going on. There were people everywhere. Some sitting on the sidewalk. One guy was passed out on someone's lawn. A girl in heels was throwing up behind a bush. The music was deafening. I called the cops again. They showed up at 3:08 a.m. Same officers. Same result. They waved. Said, "Keep it down." Then drove off. I decided I was done playing nice. Our town holds monthly meetings at the Civic Center. Anyone can sign up to speak for 5 minutes. I signed up. I didn't tell anyone in the neighborhood. I wanted it to be clean. No drama. Just facts. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the microphone. "Hi. My name is Mike Harper. I live at 1143 Pineview Drive. I've been a resident here for 18 years. I want to talk about the repeated noise disturbances happening on our block, primarily from 1147. I held up the manila folder. These are written complaints from 20 households. I've included timestamps, recordings, photographs, and statements from neighbors. I looked right at the mayor. The person responsible claims he's untouchable because he knows the cops. He told me to get earplugs. I say let's address the actual problem. There was silence in the room. Then whispers. A councilwoman asked to see the folder. Another asked, "Do you have video?" "Yes," I said. "Would you like audio too?" I handed them a USB drive. I ended my speech with this. This isn't just about loud music. It's about safety. It's about respect. It's about a guy thinking he's above the law. I sat down. A few people clapped. So after that town hall meeting, I expected some kind of ripple. Maybe a letter. Maybe a phone call from the city. What I didn't expect was what happened next. Nothing. A week passed. Then 2. Brett's house was quiet for maybe 5 days after the meeting. I thought, did we finally get through to him? But by the next weekend? Music. Bass. Voices. Laughter. 3 a.m., lights flashing from the backyard again. It felt worse now. Like he was doubling down just to make a point. Almost like he knew I'd gone public and he was daring me to try again. Then something weird happened. I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. You think you're the hero? Mind your own business before someone makes sure you learn how. No signature. Just that. At first I thought it was just a prank. But then I checked my trash bins. Someone had slashed my trash bags open and dumped everything across the front lawn. 2 days later, a screw was in my driveway. Right behind my tire. It looked placed there, not random. I took a photo of it and logged it like I did with everything else. Still, I said nothing publicly. But I started installing cameras. Not just 1. 3. One on my porch. One in the back. One on a tree facing the street. I didn't feel safe anymore. Late one night, around 11 p.m., I heard a knock. It was Terry. The retired Navy guy from the corner. Tough, quiet, polite. He looked uncomfortable. "Mike," he said. "I need to tell you something. But you're not gonna like it." He paused. Looked over his shoulder. "I heard from someone that Brett's planning to file a harassment complaint. Said you're spying on him. Said you've got cameras pointed at his house." I blinked. "That's not true." Terry nodded. "I believe you. But he's telling people you're obsessed with him. That you're angry because you're jealous. He's saying your wife left town to get away from you. She was visiting her sister in Asheville for 2 weeks. He's been twisting stories, Mike." Next thing I know, the Wilsons stop waving when I walk by. Mrs. Delacruz suddenly isn't returning my texts. I catch 2 teens on bikes taking photos of my house. No clue who they were. Then I saw it, on the town's Facebook group. A post from someone named B_dog47. I'll give you one guess who that was. Some people just can't stand to see someone else living free. Neighborhood snitches acting like heroes when really they're just miserable old men with nothing going on. And the comments? A few people agreed with him. Some called me a busybody. A few folks I thought were on my side just stayed silent. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I had put my name and face out there at that town hall. Brett? He was playing the victim now. And some people were buying it. One Tuesday morning, I was sitting in the kitchen when I saw a dark SUV pull up in front of Brett's house. It wasn't the usual Range Rover. Out stepped a man in a suit. Older. Stern. Not flashy. He had a clipboard and a stack of papers. He knocked on Brett's door. Brett came out, all smiles, until he saw the paperwork. Then, something happened. He started yelling. I couldn't hear it all, but I caught. This is MY house now. The man didn't argue. He handed him a document, shook his head, and got in the car. It didn't take long before I found out who he was. 2 days later, I got a phone call from a number I didn't know. The voice on the other end was deep. Calm. Controlled. Mr. Harper? This is Gerald Delaney. Brett's uncle. I own the property at 1147 Pineview. I froze. He continued. I understand there have been incidents. I received some complaints through the city. And I was shown something at the town council level that concerned me. He meant my folder. I'd like to meet with you in person. Just you and me. Neutral ground. How's the Grey Moose Diner? Thursday. 10 a.m. Click. I met him. He wore a gray suit. Looked like the kind of guy who drinks black coffee and reads financial reports for fun. Gerald didn't waste time. I put Brett in that house because he said he wanted a quiet place to live. He's my sister's kid. He's always been dramatic, but I didn't expect this. He opened a folder. Inside were printed screenshots from social media, HOA warnings, a summary of noise complaints, and my letter. I'm not mad at you, he said. In fact, you've helped me more than you know. Then he dropped this. But now Brett's lawyer is saying I'm liable for tenant harassment. That people are targeting him, tampering with his mail, stalking him, slashing his tires. I raised my hands. I haven't touched anything. I believe you, he said. But you've stirred the pot. And Brett? He's trying to drag you down with him. That's when I realized this wasn't about noise anymore. This was about war. After that meeting at the Grey Moose Diner with Brett's Uncle Gerald, I figured we were finally heading toward resolution. I was wrong. Turns out, Brett wasn't done. Not even close. If anything, he started moving faster. 3 days after the diner meeting, I got a knock on my door. It was a woman from the town's code enforcement office. Nice, young, clipboard in hand. Mr. Harper, we received a report of unauthorized exterior surveillance installations. I blinked. What? She gestured toward the cameras I had put up after the threats and the vandalism. Someone filed a complaint that you installed non-compliant equipment that may violate local visual privacy codes. It was a total stretch. The cameras were on my property, aimed at public areas like the street. But I knew who filed the complaint. She took photos, asked a few questions, and left politely. Said it would be reviewed by the board. This was Brett's new move, weaponizing the system. Then another twist. One afternoon I saw a white BMW pull up in front of Brett's house. A woman in heels and a blazer stepped out. Clipboard. Big smile. Real estate agent. She went to the door, and Brett let her in. That night, the party didn't happen. No loud music. No shouting. Just silence. And the next morning, a for sale sign appeared on the lawn. I didn't know what to think. Had Gerald pulled the plug? Was Brett finally being booted? Then, 2 days later, the sign vanished. Just gone. No word. No explanation. I ran into the real estate agent by chance at a gas station. I recognized the car. I introduced myself. Told her I lived near Brett's house. Asked if it was still for sale. She frowned. Oh, yeah? I pulled the listing. The tenant refused to sign the paperwork. Started getting aggressive. Threatened to sue me for trespassing. Then she said something that gave me chills. He said if he was going down, he was going to take the whole street with him. That weekend I got a letter taped to my door. It was written on plain white paper. No envelope. Cease and desist all harassment, surveillance, defamation, and invasion of privacy against Brett Delaney. Continued behavior will result in legal action. It wasn't signed by a lawyer. No contact number. Just vague threats. But it spooked my wife. She came home from Asheville just as this was unfolding. I had tried to keep it from her, but the tension was getting too thick to hide. That night she sat me down and said, Mike, what if he really tries something? He's unstable. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. The parties started again. But this time, they were smarter. Quieter. No music blasting out front. No street parking. Instead, the noise was in the backyard. Lights strung up. Fire pits. Tents. Acoustic music. People talking, laughing, but still loud enough to hear at 3:30 in the morning. No video evidence this time. No blaring bass to catch on tape. I filed more complaints. But now, the cops had even less reason to show up. And when they did, they just shrugged. He's within noise limits, they said. Remember how Brett loved to show off? He couldn't help himself. One night he went live on Instagram. Public account. Bragging about how he was untouchable. How the cops couldn't touch him. How the neighbor, who thought he was Batman, was probably crying into his cereal. He waved the cease and desist paper at the camera. I wrote this myself, he said, laughing. That was it. He admitted it. I saved the video. Downloaded it. Archived it in 3 places. That was the break I didn't know I needed. I got a call from Gerald again. This time, he sounded angry. Mike, I just found out something. Brett's not even the official tenant. He was supposed to be subleasing from my nephew Greg. That's the actual name on the lease. My jaw hit the floor. Greg? Who the hell was Greg? Apparently, Gerald had leased the property to Greg Delaney, Brett's cousin, a few months before Brett moved in. But Greg never moved in. Instead, he let Brett take over the house unofficially. No paperwork. No contract. No rent paid for the last 2 months. I'm calling the property manager, Gerald said. This is going to get ugly. Just when I thought the tide was turning. I came home one afternoon and found a citation notice posted on my door. Violation of residential conduct policy. Excessive reporting of non-verified disturbances. I stared at it for a full minute before I understood what I was reading. Brett had filed a harassment complaint with the HOA. And they were actually investigating me. The HOA sent me a letter saying I had submitted over a dozen complaints and maybe engaging in a pattern of neighborhood disruption. That's when I realized something chilling. Brett wasn't trying to win. He was trying to drag me down with him. So even if he lost, I'd lose something too. The HOA warning was the last straw. I played it by the book. I logged the noise. Took videos. Filed complaints. Kept everything calm. And now they were accusing me of causing trouble? I was angry. Not just regular mad. A deep, quiet kind of rage. The kind that settles into your bones. I felt like the whole neighborhood was cracking in half, and somehow, I was being shoved into the middle of it. But something else had been happening behind the scenes. And it all came to a head one Saturday afternoon. It started with smoke. Not heavy, just a haze. A smell in the air. Charcoal. Burned plastic. Something chemical. Then sirens. 2 fire trucks rolled down the street, followed by a white SUV with "Fire Marshal" stenciled on the side. They stopped right in front of Brett's house. Apparently, someone filed an anonymous tip about illegal fire pits and improper outdoor wiring connected to his makeshift backyard lounge. Remember those string lights and tents? Yeah, he ran extension cords through his windows into the yard. Multiple junctions. Exposed wires. They went back there. And what they found changed everything. It wasn't a fire hazard. Not yet. But during the inspection, one of the officials noticed something strange behind Brett's shed, a patch of disturbed dirt, a trapdoor half covered by leaves and a tarp. Inside? A makeshift bunker. No joke. It was a dugout space, lined with plywood and blankets. A futon. Bottles. A small generator. And worse, a lock from the outside. It wasn't a party space. It looked like a place you'd keep someone in. The entire neighborhood watched as the fire marshal came out red-faced, barking orders. Police were called. Brett was screaming. Hands waving. Cussing out the fire crew, the cops, the air. Someone recorded the whole thing. It hit Facebook before sunset. I didn't plan to walk over there. But I did. The cops weren't arresting him yet. They were still investigating. Brett was pacing in the driveway, yelling into his phone, shirtless again, red-faced. When he saw me, he laughed like a man unraveling. You happy now? He shouted. You think you're some kind of hero? I didn't say anything at first. Just looked at him. Then I asked, what was that bunker for? He paused. For once, he didn't have a smartass comeback. Just a flicker of something, fear? Shame? I didn't build that, he said. That was already there. A lie. Obvious. Weak. You locked it from the outside, Brett. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned, looked at the crowd starting to form, and just snapped. He started screaming about me, about the neighborhood, about how everyone's always out to get me. And how none of you can stand someone living free. That's when Gerald showed up. He stepped out of a black sedan like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Gerald didn't yell. He didn't even look mad. Just tired. Brett, he said. It's over. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. Brett turned on him. Screw you. You gave me this house. You said I could have a place to myself? Gerald shook his head. I said you could have a chance. You wasted it. You lied. You broke the law. You turned a community against you. He pointed toward the crowd, the cameras, the cops. Look around you. This is your doing. And then, the final cut. You're no longer welcome on any of my properties. Anywhere. You have 72 hours to get out, or I'll file for formal eviction and press charges for unpaid rent and unauthorized construction. Brett lost it. Threw his phone into the street. Screamed. Cried. Collapsed onto the grass. Nobody helped him up. He left 2 days later. Not quietly. Not peacefully. He tried one last party. Nobody came. Then, early on a Tuesday morning, I watched him shove black trash bags into the Range Rover and peel out of the cul-de-sac without a wave, without a glance. Just gone. Police still investigated the bunker. No criminal charges were filed, at least none that I know of. The official story was code violations and unsafe structures. But I still wonder. The fire marshal said. That place gave me chills. Me too. The real estate sign came back. Gerald hired a different agent. The house was scrubbed clean, landscaped, repainted. New mailbox. New blinds. It sold to a retired couple from Atlanta. They invited everyone on the block to a barbecue their first weekend. Quietest party we'd had in years. But here's the truth. Even after all that, I don't feel like I won. I feel exhausted. It took months to stop flinching every time I heard bass in the distance. Took even longer for the neighbors to talk to me like normal again. Some still won't. The Wilsons moved. Said they needed a change. I can't help but feel like I played a part in that. My wife. She supported me through it all. But one night, when things had finally settled, she asked me, "Do you feel better now?" And I didn't know what to say. I didn't do this to win. I did it because no one else would. And if I'm honest, I think Brett was broken long before he ever moved in. That house didn't break him. That street didn't ruin him. He brought his damage with him. We just happened to be standing in the blast zone when it finally exploded.